Hi, good evening, and welcome to the Conversation Tree. I'm your host, Stanton Gomes. And under the Conversation Tree is where we'll learn together, share ideas, and be inspired by the work of others. And just like a tree with many branches, we will be discussing a variety of topics as we move along. I want to thank you guys for joining. And we had a little late start, a little glitch with the technology. But I want you guys to be involved by way of comments. You could ask questions and just shoot your comments right in there. And if you're watching via YouTube, be sure to subscribe to get other notifications of the conversation tree. And tonight we'll be speaking with the wonderful folks over at the Sustainable Grenadines Inc., Orisha and Christy. And these women are the backbone of development in Union Island and in the Grenadines. And tonight we'll look at what is an NGO. We'll look at the history of SusGren. We'll look at the conservation efforts over the years and the big project that they're embarking on now, the Belmont Salt Pond project. And you'll get a little bit of boredom. I know the last edition we touched upon seaboards, so you'll maybe get a little boredom tonight. So I want to invite my first guest. She's backstage, Orisha Joseph. She's the executive director of Sustainable Grenadines Inc. Good night, Orisha.
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Right. Orisha was born in Grenada, and she now lives and works on Union Island, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, for the past 7 years. And she's a diploma holder in policy law management in ocean governance. That's from the Dalhousie University in Nova Scotia. She also did studies in sustainable coastal development at the Netherlands Science Institute and also innovative collaboration for development from the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. Orisha served on many boards between Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and she's a certified paddy diver and enjoys boarding and hiking. And our motto is pleasure on the job puts perfection in the work with the right attitude. Once again, good night, Orisha.
Good night to you, and thanks again.
And our other guest on the show, she's also backstage right now. She is Christy, no other than Christy Short. She's the program officer for the Sustainable Grenadines Inc. And you could consider her a daughter of the soil. She's from Union Island. And we're going to bring her on the big stage under the conversation tree. Good night, Christy.
Good night, Stanton. Thanks for having me here on this program also. I'm really looking forward to this program tonight, yes.
Yeah, from 2013 to 2017, Ms. Short worked at SusGren as the administrative research assistant, where work broadly addressed biodiversity and marine programs with specific relevance to the areas such as water quality monitoring programs, education, outreach in the schools. And since May 2017, she has served as the program officer, new portfolio promotion, and have been engaged in implementing projects such as the local early adaptation plan for climate change project on Caribou, Grenada. And she also undertook managing the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. That project was empowering community participation in the MPA, monitoring and stewardship in the Grenadines. And recently, in 2017, Ms. Short represented St. Vincent and the Grenadines at our Ocean Young Ambassador Program in the United States of America. She has an educational background in business from the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Community College. She's also a agro processor with the Tipsy brand. Even though I don't see the tipsy drink on the shelves much.
Just place your other one.
I guess you're gonna tell us all about that somewhere along the line. So, ladies, welcome again. We just wanna chit chat a bit. Orisha, under your leadership, you have brought the Sustainable Grenadines Inc. from a rented room, more than one rented rooms, to a prestigious complex. The branding and presence of the organization is outstanding, and there seems to be a strong culture of professionalism and perfection in the organization. How does it feel to be a woman leading this organization? Through all of that, would you consider it black girl magic?
It
In the
is Black
context,
Girl Magic.
so let us know.
Yeah. Once again, thank you so much to Radio Grenadines and Stanton Gomes for even jumpstarting this program. And we're so happy to be the second person on the program, following on from Epic and Science, who also was talking about birds, and we'll talk a lot about that later on today. So it's a really good segue. So thanks so much. Really appreciate it to be on this program here with Christy Shaw to talk about it. Yeah, as you said, being a young Black female in the field of conservation and being in a leadership position where you're leading a transboundary organization, which means that we operate both in Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Working specifically in the Grenadines, it's a tall feat. The first time I visited Union Island, I was a journalist. I fell in love with the Tobago Keys Marine Park. Fast forward, I was offered a position at Sustainable Grenadines. Within 2 years, I was thrown in the position of more or less managing the area, and then we moved from a rented office, then a second rented office, and then now in our home at Ashton Lagoon. I would call it Black Girl Magic, and what I would love to do, and I hope that my leadership here, because I'm building obviously on the foundation of many great people who would have gone before me. But being a young Black woman in this field, I hope that persons, especially young Black girls on Union Island throughout the Grenadines, will look at me and they will see an example. They will say, yes, I can do this. She's the executive director of SusGren. I can do it too. Whether it's to be a director, a scientist, or whatever, you name it. And especially in a time where, we're looking at Black Lives Matter and Black people in science and Black people in conservation. It's something that it's very near and dear to my heart. And we do pride ourselves on professionalism. We do pride ourselves on trying to get things right most of the times. And as a woman also, it's difficult to be in this arena. I remember when I just got this job, my friends were like, oh, the only people I know in these jobs are usually foreigners. And I was like, no, we can do it. So working here and also having a native like Christy Shaw, who's an exemplar on the island representing SusGren in Cuba and all over the places, presenting on projects that we're doing, makes me feel that I am doing something good. So if not for nothing, I hope that I'm being a good example to Christy and some other young woman who's looking at me and probably I don't know it. And I hope to pass on that.
Right. Thank you for those remarks. And before we go on to Christy, I want to just run through the comments and recognize the persons online quickly. We have Brianna Pierre. Good night. We have Kenya Ford. We have Omar Wilson on the comment. Kellon Alexander. Cynthia Williams. Williams Warwick. Kellon Alexander. Doris Wilson Doris. Akila Huss. Gemma Stapleton. Rosemary Simmons. Good night then. Good night to each and every one of you. And don't forget to keep the comments coming. And as we go along, you could feel free to ask questions. We want to keep you engaged. So, Christy, I want to ask you two questions in one. You've been doing quite a bit of traveling. You've been to Cuba. You've been to the Big Apple. Specifically in 2017, what was your emotions like representing a small island like Union Island and St. Vincent and the Grenadines as a whole at the Young Ambassador program, and also against the backdrop of you dedicating your expertise and your experience so far to empower your community. Do you think that more persons need to get on board and embrace the community and embrace the environment? Because here you are, basically being full-time, being employed full-time, using just your environment.
I must say that I'm really, really proud of myself and of this achievement I made in 2017. Especially being from such a small island like Union Island, represented St. Vincent and the Grenadines on a whole. It is not quite often that these opportunities knock at our door. And when I was given the opportunity by the United States Department of State through SusGren to really represent Union Island at the Ocean Youth Ambassador Program, I felt really, really elated again. For me, the opportunity to partake in this program has helped me to understand a lot over days while in the United States, to really interact with other youths like myself and other stakeholders who are engaged in marine and coastal protection. This was a really amazing learning experience. What I realized while I was there is that although many of us may be different in size, we are separated by waters and we are similar in so many ways. We face many similar problems and stuff like that. Being among 22 environmental specialists has really helped to strengthen my professional experience. It added to pre-existing knowledge. It provided me with new skills that was valuable moving forward in this field of work. And also the program helped me to reflect on myself more deeply as an individual. Um, I would say thank you, huge thank you again to the United States Department of State for really accepting and sponsoring my trip. They have given me the opportunity to really see the true potential in myself and to really make a St. Vincent and the Grenadines known to someone who may not have known much about the small island and its culture. In terms of working with SusGren, um, I must say again that your path does not have to be straight, and you just have to keep moving forward. It will be rewarded in the end. And I say this to say because as I reflect on my self-development as a young individual growing up, I never really saw myself working in the conservation field. I always have an interest in criminology, in the military, or becoming an entrepreneur. And I always wanted to make a difference, but I never really saw myself in the conservation field. But my journey began in the conservation field in 2013 as the administrative and research assistant here at SusGren through the Youth Empowerment Service Program. And that was a program that was put in place by the government for young people to really gain experience after completing school. I was not really focused on staying in SusGren for this long. The whole idea was to gain some experience from the YES program and move on. However, as time passed, I grasped what the organization was about. I started to observe what they were doing and participating in project workshops, cleanup, international celebration days, and stuff like that. I started to become more passionate towards the work being done here in the Grenadines by SusGren, and I started to fall more in love with nature and conservation work. There was a big shift in from what I study, which is business, and what I'm doing now, which is environmental education and conservation. And as I look at where I came from and where I'm now, I realize that as much as I didn't want to become a teacher or a doctor, working with SusGren, it has really exposed me to doing the job of all different professions. I became a teacher, an ornithologist, a scientist, even an event planner. Um, I was exposed to all of this. So the opportunity to really work with SusGren and to make a difference in my community, I'm forever grateful. I would say to young persons listening, you begin to fly when you let go of self-limiting beliefs and your mind and aspiration to rise and allow your mind, and your aspiration to rise to greater heights. I say this because I have come from a business background, and many times I felt like I was limiting myself because I was not equipped with as much knowledge on the environment. But over years, I have used my business background along with my environmental experience to really empower my community in the Grenadines and to help develop our resources sustainably. And if I were asked to really walk this path all over again, I would. I must also add that working with this organization, seeing the great leadership skills and the strength of Orisha pushing this organization forward, will forever motivate me as a young Black woman to strive more for excellence. And with her guidance as a leader, whenever I leave SusGren, I feel like her teaching will forever remain with me. So Yeah, basically that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, that was well put together. We have one comment. Sustainable Grenadines is doing an amazing job on Union Island. That's from Godwin James. And he also said, very proud of you, Christy, as a past student of the UISS.
Wow.
Go on
Thank you.
to higher education in this field. And I'm guessing that he was your principal, maybe
Yes,
at
he
one
was.
time. Proud, proud principal. Let me just deal with this question. One time, I know it might come up during the lineup for tonight. Is there a training program available for persons who are interested in this area, or to get persons interested in this?
In terms of environmental training overall or in a specific area? I guess
Yeah, maybe
maybe in
overall in
general. So there are a lot of projects that do provide environmental training. SusGren, through projects, we provide training in bird monitoring, water quality monitoring, and that is based on projects. And also people who are interested in learning how to dive, we also provide some training in that area. And those are based on projects. So once we have funding on projects, we will provide those training and we will send out an invitation to the community. The last invitation we sent out was geared more so to young people through the Junior Ranger program, which is what Christy headed for a number of years. And we trained a lot of young people there in terms of fish ID, water quality monitoring, beach profiling, you name it, a number of areas. And so those programs are there. Sometimes it's not always ongoing because it is based on funding, but there are opportunities. If it's not SusGren conducting these training, there are other organizations that we can put people onto that may have training available that they can get involved in.
Right. So I know we actually never started the program yet. The last show was 2 hours. Somebody said it was like a Netflix series. We're trying to keep this thing as tight as possible. So we know SusGren is a big organization, and obviously we would have to do series 1, 2, 3, blah 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 down the road.
Series 100
because they is multifaceted with the Junior Ranger program, as you said, and the research monitors, and it's complex. But tonight, basically, we'll be focusing on the Belmont Salt Pond project. That's a current project that has already been started. But we want to backtrack a bit. And because there seemed to be an interesting framework of NGOs in the Grenadines, and an interesting ecosystem of NGOs, if I might say that. We have a media NGO, which is Radio Grenadines. We have an environmental NGO doing a lot of work, Environmental Attackers, which again some blows because she said they were supposed to be the first on the conversation. But
because you're a member.
you can't fit everybody under this conversation tree, right? So there seems to be a framework, a good solid framework of NGOs in the Grenadines. So what I want you to explain, any one of you, is to explain to persons what is an NGO and the role it plays in society and what framework it fits in.
Oh, definitely. And that's a big, broad question, and I will try to make it very succinct. So non-government, so NGO means non-governmental organization, which means that it is not managed or have oversight by government. It is operated independently. And you could have two main types of NGO, which is operational NGO that is focused on community implementation of projects or implementation of projects in the community. And that will fall under whether it's religious, environmental, social, political, a number of areas, sub-areas, those can fall under. And then you have NGOs that do strictly advocacy. So for example, where you have indigenous communities and stuff like that, you'll have our things like youth development, health, you'll have NGOs that will be involved in that. SusGren is really operational NGO. We mostly focus on implementing activities within the community. our NGOs, most of the funding comes from donor agencies or from grants that you write proposals for, and some other funds can come from private entities or membership dues. But most of the times, at least 90%, 80% of funding to operate your organization comes from foreign donors, which means you have to apply for grants, get the grant, and implement the project. So that is how basically you're run. Obviously, you need to be registered with CIPO, which is the Commerce and Intellectual Property Office. Wherever you are, you need to keep your books up to date. You need to share with them all your finances and so forth. And one of the things is you're not into making a profit. And if you have areas of sales or services and so on, where you are getting money, most of that money should go back into the community, go back into developing the organization and making it sustainable. So that's one of the key things that's why it's called non-for-profit, non-governmental organization.
Right. So let's look at the history of SusGren now. We know that SusGren, well, for persons who may know, SusGren started as a project. So let's backtrack right back to that era when SusGren was not a registered NGO and it was just a project. So let's get the entire timeline from way back when. I mean, yeah, well, you could
how
hit
long
some
do I
milestones.
have?
You could hit some milestones.
It's a nice story.
5 minutes.
Okay, wow, 5 minutes. I hope I could tell the story the best way I could. And there are other qualified people to tell the story. So let me start. So Sustainable Grenadines were a project. It was first called Sustainable Grenadines Project, and it came out from the University of the West Indies. And that was led by people like Robin Mahan, Martin Barito, who some of you would have known. And our first set of funding came from Germany, the Lighthouse Foundation. And that project came about because they did some assessments, meaning the University of the West Indies, and looked at the transboundary Grenadines of Grenada and St. Vincent. And they realized that these islands, because they were separated from the mainland, that they were least able to make decisions. And therefore, the Sustainable Grenadines project came about. And that project started in 2002. And that project ran on from 2002 to 2010. A very interesting thing also is that both governments, both the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada, also supported the Sustainable Grenadines project. So we're kind of like a child of both countries saying, yes, there needs to be an entity or project that needs to take care of the transboundary Grenadines, which is why we are a transboundary organization today. And so we started in 2002. We did a number of planning sessions throughout the Grenadines. I don't know if you have the opportunity to roll that, all those pictures, where we met with a number of stakeholders, water taxi operators, fishers, marine protected areas, ferry operators. CMOS was one of the projects that we helped legitimize in the Grenadines back in 2002. And we did a number of trainings from people all the way in Beckway, all the way to Carriacou. And we started to develop programs and form a vision as to what is it that people in the transboundary Grenadines would like to see happen. You know, what is that vision for the Grenadines? And one of the things was a World Heritage Site. One of it was greening the schools, the water taxi operators, ensuring that they conduct work in the best professional way possible. So a lot of training was done there. We engaged over 400 people within the Grenadines. And that project, when it was completed in 2010 from 2002, not that one, but there's a other one with the achievement flyer. But so yes, so when we decided to, when the director at the time or the manager at the time, Martin Barito, who most of you would have known, when the project ended, persons in the Grenadines were still saying, well, hey, Sustainable Grenadines project did so much. It helped a lot of the schools. It helped provide training for persons and so on, I don't think that it's a project that should end. So if you look at some of the core activities that you have on the screen, some of the associated activities and all the training, and even our logo was different at the time, representing both countries. So we did all of that training, all of those core activities, and then it came time, as we know, with projects, all projects will come to an end. And it was decided, and rightfully so, and visionary so, by the founding members that, you know what, Sustainable Grenadines should not just, forget and be forgotten as a project in the past, but how can we transition the Sustainable Grenadines project into an NGO? And as far as I know, I've never heard a story where a project have transitioned into an NGO before. As far as I know, this is the first NGO that got transitioned from a project, and probably there are others out there, but I have not met a project that transitioned. So you can see even Union Island environmental attackers also received a lot of training from us, setting up the Sandy Island Marine Protected Area, just a host of projects we were involved in. And then we transitioned from that project into an NGO because persons in the Grenadines realized that we still need to have such an entity, an organization that could continue to do the work that we have been doing, and they thought that it was necessary. And that is how the Sustainable Grenadines Inc. Organization transitioned and was formed. So whereas we were more or less, in goober stages, we were a baby of the University of the West Indies and both the governments, we have graduated from being a teenager, and I think now we are a young adult, and now we are a full-fledged organization. And that is the short, succinct story. And as you can see on the screen, these are some of the many projects and opportunities we provided for persons throughout the Grenadines, doing signage in PT Martinique, helping actually, we were also involved in setting up the Fisherfolk Cooperative on Union Island many, many moons ago, and so on. And also that is when the brainchild of restoring Ashton Lagoon also was started, and many people were involved. Some are with us today, and some have gone to the great beyond. So it's quite a story, and so many people have been involved over the years with Sustainable Grenadines transition from a project and now into an NGO.
Right, so you could say SusGren is like the mother of a lot of groups, either being formed as a result of the intervention of SusGren, or that SusGren would have been able to strengthen capacity. But we must shout out Martin Barreto. He would have been the face of SusGren for a long time.
Yes.
So if you're watching now, or if you're gonna watch the video after, just giving you a shout out.
And Robin Mahan, and who else? Mr. Herman Belmar. Just a host of people. Miss Blenko, she's no longer with us. People like Mrs. Adams. Just a host of people. Jack Dowden, he has gone off. Just a host of people. Lisa Sorensen, in the early days. So many people. Father Andrew, a whole lot.
Yeah. So if you were to just touch on maybe one of your past project, just a brief overview, one of your milestone projects in the past, whether it be from your era or before, which one would you want to just hit on before we get further into the program?
Well, Christy, you know which one we're going to hit on, and because that one have transitioned from the old to the new, and that's the Ashton Lagoon Restoration Project.
Our biggest project to date.
Our biggest project to date.
Yeah, because that's like in between from the past administration to the present. So just touch on it. Just give me a brief overview on it.
Yeah, so certainly. So as we know, in 1995, a developer came to Union Island. They wanted to put in a marina, and developed Frigate Island, and a year later, the developer disappeared. In 2007, Sustainable Grenadines, along with the community, people like Lisa, Matthew, Harvey, and others met, and the community came together and they mapped out a vision as to what would you like to see happen, because so many people used to use the area for fishing, to pick up conchs, lobster, birds, just have picnics over on Frigate Island. And since then, Sustainable Grenadines have been working with the government and community members to restore the area. Restoration meaning reopen the finger piers that were placed down during the construction phases, and do some mangrove replanting, because the road that was cut to get over to Frigate Island, that cut off water circulation in and out of the mangrove. So you have that dieback area in the middle. When you're on Union Island, you see that. So years, it took us actually 10 years. It took us 10 years of doing studies, collecting data, working with all the various departments in government, forestry, fisheries, national parks, a host, plus a science initiative, Birds Caribbean, Avian Eyes, just a host of different stakeholders, community members, and agencies to finally get that project going. And we finally received permission to do the Ashton Lagoon Restoration Project in 2014, I believe it was, but then we had lost funding, and we had ended up launching the project, and we had no way of, wow, how do we get funding now, since we have lost funding because it took us too long to get the approval. After that, lo and behold, in 2016, we received funding from the German Development Bank through 5Cs, and that is what was able to fund what we now have as the restoration of Ashton Lagoon, where we were able to open 7 gaps or finger piers to create circulation in the area. We were also able to create swales, which were able to bring water from the ocean into the mangroves, build our interpretive center and office, train people in, which are the community researchers program of Union Island. We were able, through Brianna Pierre, who was the project manager, I think she's in the chat now, to train people to conduct bird monitoring, water quality monitoring. Mangrove restoration was led by Matthew Harvey and Aiden Photo from TNC in Grenada, and a host of other projects. And now today, we actually have Ashton Lagoon. When Christy and I used to go to do bird monitoring along with Katrina of attackers, Union Island environmental attackers, there were like 0 people within a year visiting the area, like 2 people, just 2 of us, just you and I and our shadows, and then once in a while we may see someone pass on the trail. And when we opened up the area, the bridge again was such an attraction. When we did that project, you want to guess how many visits we had from both local and international? And that's a conservative number. So far, we had over 2,000 local visits to the area and over 1,000 international visits to the area. And that's very conservative. We have not even tallied up for the beginning of the year to tell you how much on weekends where you could have up to 35 people. They're going fishing, picnic with their family, just a walk. I know there's a young man on the island who goes to the pergola and he exercises and do all of that. And that's the type of thing we want to do, not looking after people and nature, and also to add an attraction to Union Island and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And that's one of our staff there, Audwin, who students will come in and they will visit the area. We had Union Island Secondary School, we had Mayreau Preschool come over. So many other international organizations visited the area. We were on Zing magazine at Liet. Christy was featured there. The write-up was done by Birds Caribbean. And when we posted up the bridge, and I think the photo within a day got 20,000 likes. And that was like, wow. So we're happy that people are enjoying this space, and we were very happy to do this project because this project took 10 years to get there, and we are not done yet. This is just like the surface. This is just
because the Ashton Lagoon project turned out to be, and it's not fully completed all the phases as yet, but it turned out to be so far one of the largest, one of the best attractions that we have on Union Island. The first thing when people come to Union Island,
they want to see the bridge.
That's our goal at Gate Bridge.
Yes, Christy.
You can't come to Union Island and then visit the 2 suspension bridges. I mean, that's one of the things that I love about the choice of projects. It cut across both conserving the biodiversity and so on. Also, it doubles as a livelihood opportunity through tourism for persons. And I mean, you're making my work easier as the chairman of the tourism board.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
Tourism hotspots popping up all around. Well, making my life easier.
Well, that's great. And you making our lives easier too, and that's what we're here for. To leave a legacy.
So we can just go through some of the comments. Good night. Thanks for this program, Radio Grand. It's very informative. Maria Blanco says, thank you, Orisha, for the recognition of Mommy. That's Miss Blanco. And it's so fitting tomorrow would have been our 80th birthday. Yes. Miss Blanco is celebrating our birthday on the 10th, which is tomorrow. We have some stuff. With us
for many years.
We have some stuff planned for Saturday at the square, having a little dedication of something. And also, I'm going to tell Maria something about her mother that I don't think she knows, but I'm going to wait till a little later in the program. I noticed a comment here that, let me try to get it back. Oh, yeah, this person seems to have the script, have the agenda, the program agenda. How do you determine what your next project will be? And that would have been my next question to you. Is for you to give me a behind the scenes look at a typical project. How does a project become a project? How do you know that it's needed in the community? And maybe some behind the scene work that people don't get to see in the office. What was the mood like?
I will take the part of what how do you determine what your next project is, and just talk a little bit about that. And then Christy could take up some of the behind the scenes by the concept and the full proposal and all of that. Christy will take up that part. So how do we determine our next project? Which is a great question. So most of the projects that Sustainable Grenadines are implementing now is based off of all the data we have collected over the years from the community. See that flyer that you had up before? So all those meetings that we have been having throughout the Grenadines, especially on Union Island, all the data we have been taking, whenever a call for proposal comes out, whenever that particular activity suits the call for proposal, meaning, say, for example, if we had many community meetings before, and let's say they say that one of the projects they want to do is to fix up in front of Clifton Harbor, right, which will involve construction and things like that. A call for proposal will come out, but that proposal may say, for example, these donors do not do construction, which means that we have to look at all the different projects that the communities would have proposed during those meetings and look for the one that best suits what the donors are asking for. Because it's one thing to want projects to be implemented, and there's the other thing is if the projects align with what the donors want. So for example, with the Ashton Lagoon project that we just spoke about, it was aligned to a particular donor, and definitely this one that we'll be talking about tonight, which is the Belmont Salt Pond project. While we would have collected data since in 2013 and had a community vision, as to what they will want to see happen in Belmont Salt Pond. We collected that since in 2013, people drawing out and mapping out the vision as to what they will want to see happen in Belmont Salt Pond. In 2020, here is an opportunity to do that. So with that said, this is how we choose our projects based on all the data, workshops, meetings we would have had with the communities in the past, and match it to the call for proposals that will come out presently. And I will give Christy an opportunity to talk about behind the scenes and what goes on.
I'm hoping to hear. I'm hoping to hear something. Like when you're by the international, when you have a rocket launch, and then they get this loud cheer in the entire office. So hoping to hear some stories like that. So go ahead, Christy.
I mean, behind the scenes of the project, the most happiest part is when you hear that your project is being approved and you hear money in your bank accounts and all of that. But in terms of actually executing the project, there's a lot of work behind the scenes. You have to be making a lot of phone calls. You have to be to wait on persons, whether it's from the ministries, to give approval for these projects. And sometimes this is like a big holdup. It will take weeks for them to respond to emails that you may send in order to get approval. It may take weeks for them to sign a document. So whenever we have a project going, sometimes it's not really our fault, SusGren, for persons who may say, okay, SusGren taking long to start this project and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff behind those that we have to do and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like sometimes as Christy mentioned, it's so much we take long. Like as I said, Ashland Lagoon took 10 years. The people who were there have not left, and then we just implemented. So sometimes what will happen is like you have a call for proposal. This is what it's called. You will either get an email. If you're on a network, someone will send it to SusGren and say, hey, here is an opportunity for funding. See if there's a particular project that fits that script. And then the first stage you have to do is to send out a concept, which is usually about 3 to 5 pages. And this is where you sell your project. It's kind of like a business pitch, and remember, you're competing not just in Union Island, you're competing with people across the region and even internationally. Sometimes hundreds of people is competing for that same grant. So first you send off your concept note, and after you send out your concept note, you wait to hear back. Sometimes that could take a month, 2 months. Sometimes it could take 6 months. Sometimes it can take a year before you hear back. So while you would have spoken to the community in January to say, hey, we're fixing this problem for you guys in January, when you would have written the project, you hear back sometimes 6 months later or a year later.
And sometimes with bad news.
Sometimes with bad news. And then you're like, oh, how do I go now to the community and tell them, this project was not approved? And so that's one. And then if it's approved now, the second stage is for you to develop your full proposal. And your full proposal for entrepreneurs online is like going to the bank with your business plan, and you want to get that loan. So you have to sell it. And again, you're going up against more people, St. Lucia, Grenada, Barbados, and Vincent, like all over, So you have to make sure that you take your time to write that grant. Actually, writing a full proposal could take you literally 1 month, like just writing a proposal, because most of the times the donors will give you at least a month. Some donors do, if it's not one of those really big organizations, like let's say a USAID, a TNC, the European Union. If it's a small organization, it could take a couple of weeks, which this SVG fund was not that stringent. But in most cases, when you're going after the very big grants, it could take you 1 month, just sitting down every day, writing proposals, finding data, finding information. And then when you take that month to write it, they will tell you, okay, in the next 3-4 months, you will hear back. sometimes with good news, sometimes with bad news. And sometimes you can hear back and say your project was approved, but conditionally. So, for example, you would have told the community you're going to get X, Y, and Z, but then the donors say, well, you did include that in your project, but we are not including that anymore. So you need to take that out because our funding has changed. So then you're like, I've told the community that they're getting 100 water tanks. How do I go back to them and tell them they're getting 50? You know, or something. Or I told the community that we're going to build 10 bird towers. How do I go back and say it's only 5, or whatever the scenario might be? And then, so you have to make that decisions. Okay, just go for it. You write a proposal, it gets approved. Sometimes it could take you, for example, with the Ashton Lagoon project, as I said, I wrote that project in 2016. The project took, the negotiation just for the agreement took 1 year. Like just to negotiate the paperwork, it took 1 year before we signed. We signed in 2017, and we had 3 years to implement the project, but because the negotiation of the funders and the intermediary persons who were then bringing the fund to, sending the fund to SusGren, that took another 6 months. So SusGren was not able to get back the time that 1.5 years it took just in paperwork. So then we had to complete this Ashton Lagoon project in like a year. A project that would have taken 3 years, we have to complete it within like 1 year, and still doing all the reporting and still doing all the activities needed. So most of your days could spend just speaking to donors, Skype calls, Zoom, change this, remove that, take out this, do that. You know, it's a whole lot. Most of the times, Christy and I, we get up, we go to the veranda, we stretch, we come back, we sit down, pull ourselves together and be like, oh my, how do we get through this? But at the end, as you know, we get it together. So in some cases, if it's a small project, it could take a month, 2 months. If it's those bigger projects that is giving you real funding, like in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, it could take a year or 2 years or 3 years from the time you write the project to the time when you receive funding in your bank account, you know? And that is not, I think that is not to say you are, it's not a bad thing for the donors. It's because these international donors deal with giving people funding throughout the world. So Caribbean, Pacific, Africa, United States, wherever, Latin America, Central America. And because their documents is not specified for Union Islands, not specified for St. Vincent or Grenada or the Caribbean in some cases, it is most of the time generic documents. And sometimes because we are unique in our small space, you may only have a handful of contractors, a handful of expertise, a handful of other specialists, that it is hard sometimes for donors to have to change their contracts or their agreements or their operational structure just because they want to give Union Island a project when they're dealing with the rest of the world. You see where I'm coming from? So it's a lot. So you know, Christy and I, we have to be smart, you know, in terms of how you write the projects, how you frame it, the language that you use. You know, just using a particular language could not get you funding. You know, you have to speak the language of the donors, speak the language that they understand and they grasp and they get. It's more like finessing, as I said. It's like going to that bank with your business plan and hoping and praying that they give you that loan to implement your dream business. So it could take some time. And then there are other smaller projects that is like that.
So it's a science.
It's a science. Yeah, right. You know, people will come up, hey, Orisha or SusGren, I want you all to write a project for me to do X. It doesn't work so. Maybe Christy and I make it look easy, but it does not work so at all. And then sometimes we are faced with rejection, like, oh, your project didn't get approved. We wrote a project to do clean up on the island and so on. And twice we wrote that project and we did not get funding to do that, and we know. It was heartbreaking. Christy was like, because we were competing with how much, 100 and something people from all over the world, So.
Yeah.
But is the job one that in the night when you're sleeping, as you're dreaming and thinking of maybe during a project, a secrecy lab?
Yeah, nightmares.
So does it have you dreaming or thinking in your dream, maybe you should do it this way? Maybe if you have a project under execution, any sleepless nights in general?
All the time is sleepless nights. For those people who know me in union, what do they say about me? That girl always leaving the office late in the night. What is she doing? Why is she walking home in the night? Why is she? What is she doing? Right now, I'm in the office. So yes, sometimes you make a decision that you go and you think, oh my God, I should have handled this different. We should have done that. We should have done that. And that's life. And that's how you mature. And that's how you develop. Without making mistakes, you can't have success. And that is what we have learned. And we're still learning. We're still growing. It's a job where your job is never finished. You can't, if you're working in other organizations, you could close off the cash register and start afresh. In conservation environment, you don't start afresh. It's a continuous thing. And that is what makes it sometimes very, very hard on you. You can't take your vacation sometimes because you're still answering email. Your phone is blowing up in the middle of the night. And because we work with consultants from all over the world, for example, in Australia, Odwin, who is not on working on the other project, he has to stay up in order to get to the people so we can have an update on the flow hives that is coming for different projects. So whereas he is probably with his family, I'm texting him hey, remember to sync your time with Australia time so you could have the Skype call, sometimes early in the morning, 6 o'clock, you on a call because you're speaking to somebody in France, or 2 o'clock in the morning because you're speaking to someone somewhere else. So it is a taxing job, but the reward is good at the end. That's what I would say.
Right. So we just want to run through two questions quickly, and this pertaining to the Ashton Lagoon. Maria Blanco's asking if there's a sign-in book when you visit. I've been asking about that.
Christy, there's one downstairs, I think, but people usually just...
There isn't directly a sign-in book. What I normally do each day, I record tourists, whether it's local visitors, male and female, international visitors, male and female, and the activities that they do. But to actually have a sign-in book where tourists come in and sign in, no.
That could be a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Right. And the next question from Godwin James: how is the bridge at the lagoon maintained to ensure safety?
Right. So we have our work supervisor and our engineer, and we do maintenance work on the bridge now. Every 6 months we do maintenance work. We grease the cables with marine grease that we get from the United States. We spray the lumber with linseed oil to keep the strength. And actually tomorrow the guy should be finishing up maintenance. That is the third maintenance we have done so far within a year and a half since we have built the bridge. So there's a plan every 6 months to do maintenance, which is the grease. We call it a marine grease, anti-rust paint, oiled linseed oil, and then we will revarnish. If there's any screws that's out of place, we put it back and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we see we have two of your board lovers in the house.
Yes, I see Nicole, and Kenya.
Yeah. One more question on the subject of projects, the broad subject of projects. Rosemary Simmons is asking, are there any future projects in sight? And one of them can be a special NGO funded for our roads. We would need good roads to access all of our sites, especially along our seashore. Rosemary already learning the language.
We would need to access what you said, especially along the seashore. That's a good question. Are there any future projects in sight, and can one of them be a special NGO funding for roads? That's the other thing I also need to mention. Based on the NGO that you are, in terms of what your area of focus is, sometimes you are not eligible for certain grant funding, right? Since we are environmental capacity building, these are the funding we will get. But again, to answer that question in terms of, we don't have that for roads now, but if there's a project or a call for proposal that is out, we could always look out for that and we could take on that, because it's a very important thing, a question. So thanks for that question.
And Doris is asking, do you have a list of donors that you pull from when you have a project, or is there a general database that everyone uses?
One, there's a general database where we are on, like, I don't know, umpteen mailing list where projects will come through, and we also have a list of donors. And based on how good you implement projects, you can have donors coming directly to you to provide funding. So these are the three ways, Doris.
Great. So we want to recognize Mr. Van Born Harry. He's the Chief Executive Officer for the SVG Conservation Fund, and as you would learn later, that's the one of the agencies responsible for funding the Belmont Salt Pond project. And while we while we mention it, we'll go right into the project. Let me bring up the project title: Building a Zero Waste Ecosystem for Enhanced Biodiversity for Birds and People at the Belmont Salt Pond. So, could you give me you could start by giving us an overview of the Belmont Salt Pond. What some of the activities that takes place there? And I know it's a popular boarding site over the years, but maybe unknown to many. So,
okay, so I'll take the lead on that.
Yes.
All right, so I am the project coordinator for that project. That project is entitled Building a Zero Waste Ecosystem for Enhanced Biodiversity for Birds and People at Belmont Salt Pond. The main funders for that project are the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Conservation Funds, and also Bird Caribbean. Just to give persons an overview of the Belmont Salt Pond, it is the second largest ecosystem on Union Island. It is about 23 acres in size, and one of the two last remaining ponds that is here in the entire St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where salt picking is still practiced and provides some economic benefits to locals. The other pond being on the island of Mayreau. Normally, the harvesting of salt, it will last from March to the beginning of a rainy season. And in a good year, we have thousands of pounds of salt collected by hand. This area is not only important for salt harvesting. Another important aspect of the area is that it's an important budding area. It's an important habitat for many residents and migratory species. We have recorded approximately 60 species since we have been doing monitoring over the years. We have birds like Whimbrels, ducks, willets, and we have recently welcomed the Caribbean Flamingo within that area. It stayed for like about 3 months within that area. So with this rich history and biodiversity in mind, SusGren will really like to address the need for enhancing the area for future ecotourism development opportunities, biodiversity protection, and to really continue doing monitoring within this area. Currently, the area is being used to make or burn charcoal, and over the years monitoring this area, a lot of garbage is being dumped within this area. So the rationale for really proposing this project is really to ensure that such behavior is reduced and eventually eliminated, because such practice can really cause degradation over a period of time at the Belmont Salt Pond, and biodiversity can be really impact negatively. And we believe here at SusGren that through this project, it will be like the first step taken to really address these concerns. The real goal of this project is to really reduce the amount of garbage and charcoal production in the Belmont Salt Pond area for a healthy ecosystem that is conducive for biodiversity, ecotourism, and sustainable activities. And in order to address this goal, we have a number of output. First being the installation of 2 wildlife viewing platforms for continued bird monitoring by tourists and locals. And the reason why this was an output is because over the years, we have noticed that the mangroves within that pond, it has grown a lot, and it have been obstructing us from really counting the birds within that area. And we believe that with these platforms, in place, we will be able to have access, and a lot of birds will not be left uncounted. I just want to say, with these towers in place, is not only for bird monitoring. You can go with your family and you can enjoy the area. You probably want to do moonlight with your family. You can use this platform that is in place to do all these type of stuff. Another output coming out of this project will be the placement of receptacles and interpretive signs within the area. We want to really do like a big cleanup, not just a one-time cleanup, but over a period of time. So probably like every other month, we want to join with the Union Island Cleanup Squad to really clean up the area, put these bins in place. So after you finish cleaning, you have these bins persons can use. With the interpretive signs, we want to do three big history sign for the area. It will be like a welcome to Belmont Salt Pond area. We'll have the history of the area, why the area is important, and stuff like that on these signs. We'll also have birding signs on the platform. So persons who are at the tower, they can use the same sign to really identify birds. You may see a bird you're not too familiar. On these signs we'll have different birds on them. And we will also have a rule sign, things that you can do within that area, on things that you would not be able to do. Our third output will be to train at least about 10 persons in conducting bird monitoring. We'll be using the CWC bird monitoring protocol, and the CWC monitoring protocol is run by Birds Caribbean. It's a program that helps persons to learn more about the distribution, the status, the abundance of birds in the Caribbean, in order to better conserve and manage these beautiful birds and their habitat. Our fourth output will be to design a bird checklist specific for the Belmont Salt Pond area. I'm working on that. We're looking at a 20-page max check booklet. It will have in the names of the bird and the picture of each bird, and whether the bird will be a migratory bird or a resident bird in that checklist. In addition to all this, the project will also conduct outreach in schools and also in the community to bring more awareness of the importance of birds and the actual wetland area. So that's just basically a run through of the 4 outputs that will come out of this project.
Right. So well, we wanna bring in quickly Mr. Van Born Harry. And as I said before, he's the Chief Executive Officer for the SVG Conservation Fund. He'll be coming in from the mainland. I'm not too sure if he's ready. However, I'm still gonna bring him in just to give an overview from the funders' perspective. What was the process like, and maybe you could share some stuff on the SVG Conservation Fund and as well as why this project stood out in all the applications. So, Mr. Harry, good night.
All right, good night, good night. Can you hear me well?
Yes, loud and
Yes,
clear.
we can.
Yes, yes. I'm actually driving. I was listening to the program. I'm actually driving now, but I'll try to be as brief as possible and respond to your question. Well, this was our first call for proposal, and we had a very successful call for proposal in that we would have received about 15 applications, concept notes, and then of course, after taking decisions, our technical advisory committee reviewing those concept notes, it boiled down to about 6 full proposals, and then from there were 3 successful proposals to which we would have approved grant funding. What stood out particularly about this project from the sustainable is the fact that it would have been responding to 2 of the goals that we would have highlighted in our call for proposal. The first goal would have been to promote and protect ecosystems, and the second one would be speaking towards education and awareness. And the project was a good fit in regards to those goals. And I think what impressed the technical advisory committee as well in terms of recommending that project for approval is the host of objectives that they have outlined to, to, to try and achieve, and the issues that they would be combating with regards to what is going on in the Belmont Salt Pond. And we know how important that wetland area is right now, as Orisha and Christy would have just explained. It's one of the 2 remaining areas where salt picking is still done in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and it's home to a wide and diverse amount of biodiversity. So it is of very important significance to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. One of the things that I would like to see coming out of this project after the completion of it within a year's time or so is that eventually this wetland area could be considered as a protected area, to try and conserve the biodiversity and the ecosystem that is present there. And as they would have mentioned, that this is an area that is home to a lot of local birds and migratory birds. So there's tremendous activity that's happening there, and there are tons of issues that are in the Belmont Salt Pond right now that needs to be corrected if we are to have this area conserved and protected. Um, as I said, I was going to try and be brief. I don't know if I I stop there.
Great.
Yeah, well, thanks for the overview. Um,
No problem.
if since you're driving, it means that the technology is working.
Yes, indeed, indeed. Let me just say good night to Sustainable Grenadines, and congratulations again on your approval for grant funding from the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Conservation Fund. I listened to some of the program where persons were inquiring about how can they get involved in conservation and environmental work. But one of the things I would like to mention here, I know this is about SusGren and the Belmont Salt Pond, is that the St. Vincent and Grenadines Conservation Fund. Pretty soon we're going to launch our volunteers program. So anybody, a person who will be who might wish to get involved in conservation work or to give freely of their time to help St. Vincent and Grenadines Conservation Fund achieve some of their mission and vision objectives can do so, can apply and be a volunteer of the St. Vincent and Grenadines Conservation Fund in that program.
Right, and we have to bring you under the conversation tree to talk about that program.
Yes, there's no problem at all. I'll be
Yeah.
happy to.
It'll be great to have them on because they're doing great work.
So, Mr. Van Born, once again, thanks for taking some time out to join in on the program, and safe journey for the rest of the way.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much. I'm
Van
still
Bun.
listening though.
All right.
Okay, thanks, Van Bun.
All right.
Right. So we want to get back to Christy, and they say pictures tell 1,000 words. So I want to bring up the picture that I had floating around there, and this is Christy. This is one of the garbage area, right?
Yeah, that's where our second platform is built. So that's where the garbage are on.
All right.
Yeah, it's and I just wanted to say this too. I know we talk a lot about biodiversity and so on, and it's also very important for biodiversity because birds, as you would have heard in the first program that you have, that some of these birds would actually feed on plastics and they would digest them and die. But I think a very other important thing, which is the most important thing to me, is that people pick salt in that area. And if you're picking salt in that area, you'll want to pick salt in an area that is less polluted or not polluted at all. So I think that is one of the reasons, again, why it's so important to get people involved and let them see how great of a feature the Belmont Salt Pond is while they're picking salt. And before I forget, I really want to give a shout out to Christy mentioned the Union Island cleanup unit. What's their name? That's the group with
Yeah,
Zoe.
Cleanup
cleanup
squad.
squad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the group with Zoe. They did a tremendous job a couple of weeks ago. The first time they picked up 30 bags of garbage at Belmont Salt Pond, and that was just covering just like quarter of the pond. And then they went back there again and they picked up 40 bags of garbage. So that's like 70 bags of garbage within that area. And that is not around the salt pond. That is just like quarter of the salt pond. You see? And so if it's an area that we love, it's a great tradition. Where else do people do salt picking? That is one of the things we must be concerned with in terms of salt picking and pollution. So we need to really address that situation, clean up the area, and have it for what it really is, which is a cultural heritage site that Union Island people love. I mean, we love to see the salt get ripe between March and people going out there and pick it. And then having the platforms there, people could go, they could enjoy, they could look at birds, they could just enjoy nature in general and have a different perspective of the area. Because most of the times people might just drive by and not notice it sometimes because, but no, you could actually go and look and see and relax and actually know of some of the activities that is happening there that we should really address for sure because it's a cultural place.
And this is the one of the areas, and then this is like a before shot.
Yeah.
And in the same area, now you could, if you drive past the area, you would
It's like
see
an after.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful transformation. And what I want to do is pull up one more photo, which gives us where Christina could, which you could go back over some of the outputs just to put things in perspective. Let me get this back here. All right. So this is an overhead shot of the salt pond.
Right.
So some of the outputs would be the two platforms.
Right.
They're already being built, and
Yeah.
they would be used primarily for board watching, board monitoring, and also I'm already seeing that it would make a great addition to the tourism product where persons could go out and get to see the salt pond in its entirety.
Yep.
And what are the other
So we are going to install the receptacles as seen in the picture.
Right.
And then we're going to install these 3 welcome signs, which will say welcome to Belmont. It will also give a history of the area and why the area is important. That is for salt picking and also for bird monitoring, etc.
Right. And just briefly touch back on the training component of the project.
For the training, we want to have a training. We say about 10 persons to be trained in bird monitoring. It could be more. We'll have to decide on that. We just want to give person the opportunity to be able to identify birds and be able to know how to record them correctly and use the Birds Caribbean website, which is eBird, and be able to enter the data so that we can track the distribution and the status and the abundance of birds over the Caribbean over a period of time.
Right.
Yeah.
And something also which I've noticed, maybe Orisha could expand on it. There also seems to be some community learning taking place, especially with the tradesman involved in the building
Yes.
of this and other projects that you're working on. Could you expand a little bit on that?
Yes, definitely. I'm so happy you raised that. Also part of SusGren stride is when we are implementing projects, it's not just to implement a project and tick off a box, but the people that we are working with, how we can train them up to become more professional and to really hone their skills. So the guys who are working at the Belmont platform, a lot of people, it seems to me, have not worked, or really taken to good engineering practices. And in working with the tradesman and the workman, we let them know it is not just putting on a platform there, but you have to build it properly. So we had to build a raised platform. We had to get geotextile fabric all the way from Trinidad, lay the geotextile fabric on the ground level, put the fill material, which was tested, do an environmental screening impact assessment that was looked at by forestry, fisheries, and national parks. After we put the fill material, we had to wrap the fill material in geotextile fabric and then put stones around it from the local quarry. And the reason for doing that is because if you have any rain or anything like that, you don't want to have runoff. Because what we notice, people get involved in construction in a sensitive area, and these engineering steps are not taken. So when we were building, the first step is that when people would have seen the dirt, it was actually on geofabric, and then we wrapped the edges around and then put stones around the area. So therefore, if you were to have flash flooding or anything like that, the geofabric will hold all of that in. And again, because you're building within an area that will have a certain level, a certain water level during the rainy season, like now, you can't build it flat, of course, because you'll be building in the water. So you actually have to build it at a raised platform, which we did at about 5 feet. It was designed that way, and then we build further up. So part of the training process for the guys is that we always ensure that we have a certified project manager with engineering background. So when we are out with the guys who are working on the projects, that the guys learn one time. And they're not just doing work, but they understand why they're doing this. Why are you putting geofabric? Why are you packing the stones that way? Why are you taking precise measurements? Why are you using this type of material and not this type of material? All of that is also a training opportunity for some of the younger folks on the island who work on projects like this. And we will talk more again in the other opportunity with the Jeff-funded project with the honey facility. That again, they had to take some time to learn and understand that before you build a building, you need to wrap it in plastic. You need to put on your flash guard. You need to put on, get your 5/8 sheetrock if you can, and not the 1/2 inch. So many things that we try to impart and have them learn while we implement in a project rather than just ticking off a box.
Right, so it's a great learning experience for them at the same time to bring them up to international standards.
Yeah.
And I think maybe if you could relate, if persons could relate to what happened in Trinidad and Tobago when the oil industry took off, a lot of the local businesses there, because of the international because of the oil industry and the international influence, a lot of the local businesses were forced to come up to international standards and do work and bidding and stuff on the international. So
it's so great that it's great that you mentioned that, because that was the other thing that we need to mention again, especially for small islands, because we are not in the habit of bidding for jobs. But you meet someone and you tell them, people meet me, hey, I want to work. It's not, hey, I want to work. That's not how it works. All of our projects have to be bid. Even when we were doing the Ashton Lagoon, they actually wanted us to bid internationally. That was the criteria for the donors. And we really had to push back and say, hey, you need to bring it to local. And then they put it, well, okay, if you're not bidding international, you need to bid regional. And we were like, you can't bid regional. Can we at least bid national? So sometimes it's a fight. So if local contractors are listening, it's good to get your paperwork. You have to have bonds. Most of the contractors that we work with, they have to have bonds. They have to fill out a long contract, some of it pages up to 60 to 100, that talks about indemnity, conflict of interest, and all of that. So it's not just meet two fellas, a workman, and come and do two work here. It's real for real things, because these donors will come back and do their audit checks and so forth.
Yeah, so you can take two questions from the same person. Wilson Doris says, are these platforms shaded, or would that not be feasible because of the location?
Well, it's because of the budget.
Right.
So hopefully if we get additional budget in the future, that could happen.
Right. And we have a next question from the same person. Orisha, when funding is given, do you get monitored to ensure that the funds are being spent wisely, or do you just submit something at the end of the project?
Oh my, no, you get monitored. So organizations like SusGren, we get monitored in three parts. We get monitored by USAID, which is the United States Agency for Development. They send down their auditors, and their auditors audit us. And after their auditors audit us, then we have to get our auditors to verify that auditing. So all our projects, everyone, it is being audited by the donors. We can't, So everything is being audited by those donor agencies at international standards.
All right. And we have a next comment from Naz Young. We need to do better where litter is concerned. Great overview of this project, Christy, with Orisha the helm. Well done, SusGren.
Thank you, Naz.
All right. So we're now winding down to the last of the last. We're at 1 hour, 23 minutes. It seems as though once you're under the conversation tree and you have a lot of stuff to talk, just
keep going.
Just cut it down. Karen Roberts says, good morning. In tune from the UK. Karen Roberts, I want to say thank you. Let me see. 8, 19, 11, 12, 1, 1:46. It's 1:46 a.m. in the UK. So I want to thank Karen Roberts for either staying up or going to bed and wake up back to catch the program. And it was a comment that I saw during one of the posts today, that we had to take the persons in the UK into consideration because they're 5 hours ahead. So a program starting at 5 would be midnight for them. So we're trying to balance everything. The lives during the day are for the UK people. Yeah, but we're gonna try to see if we get some conversation, because that's why it's a floating program. We didn't pin it down to a specific time or a day. So Orisha, any last words, any last remarks? And also, persons listening, you could shoot some last questions as we wrap up this show.
Definitely. I just want to say thanks, a big thanks to obviously Radio Grenadines for having us under the conversation tree. I'm really enjoying the program and I can't wait to be back again. I want to say thanks to our main donors for this project, which is the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Conservation Fund, and which is so great that we're actually getting fund from our local partners. So big shout out to SVG Conservation Fund and our partnering funder, which is Birds Caribbean, who have been working with us for years. I also want to acknowledge the support of the Director of Grenadine Affairs, obviously the Tourism Office, and the Community Development Officer for giving the letters of support for this project. Obviously, Christy, who is the project coordinator, and everyone else who have given their support on the project. And of course, the people of Union Island. And, since from 2013, when this project was conceptualized by the people of Union, I know it's in 2020 and we just implementing it, but to say thanks for your patience. And we can't wait to actually do the official unveiling once we have put up all the signs and all the receptacles and everything is in place. We can't wait to invite people to do the unveiling. And just say thanks to everyone for your support and the people who also keeps us on our toes.
And Chrissy, any last remarks?
All right. All I just want to say is follow us on Facebook.
Yes. Yes.
As SusGren, Grenadines NGO. Don't forget to follow us and like us and all the things that we're doing. Also follow us on Instagram, Twitter. It's up on the site, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also visit our website to see more of what we're doing here in the Grenadines. Yeah, that's basically it.
Like our page.
On Instagram at the @ SusGren, Twitter sus_Gren, and you have the website there. So I guess at the website, persons will be able to get a lot more information. susgren.org and the telephone number 4858779. Let's get some more comments. Excellent job on your island. Very happy. Please keep up the great job. Looking forward to see the improvement on the island. And great live tonight, everyone. Both the young ladies very knowledgeable about their job and cause. As always, awesome job, RG and Stanton. But my last remarks would be, we now seeing the entire story coming together, the tourism story for Union Island coming together, because the drive now is from the tourism board's perspective. The drive now is to transform the island into a destination, gradually transform it, and gradually to improve all of the tourist attractions. We have a lot of work to do on the fort, but I must say the Belmont Salt Pond project is a wonderful addition. Apart from the conservative side, it's a wonderful addition to the tourism product, because many persons would know if you're giving somebody a drive through the area and you want to show them the salt pond. Usually, what you start to do, let me tell you,
bend them under the trees.
That's recently this happened. Right? I was taking somebody from one of my friends from the mainland. I was trying to show him the salt pond, so he had a reverse and try to see if you catch a gap between the mangrove. Right? And then sometimes you've seen it, but the other person advance a little bit and say, "Hey, I seen it there." You see. So I'm looking forward to using the platform both for bird watching and for just walking out, seeing how you could step out in style.
And photo shoot.
I want to see the first person who will take out their wedding photo there. Mind you, not like who was. But remember,
use carefully. I would want to advocate for persons to take care of
definitely
of all of the facilities we have now, because they're expensive to maintain.
Yeah, to maintain.
We have Jessica Jaja from Beckwith just caught the end of the show, but I know you could get the recording. There's not any comment, but this is amazing. Loving it, everyone. Brilliant initiative. Looks and sound amazing. And we have an amazing under the conversation tree to do out of Beckway with Jessica and the whole team there. A lot of work they've been doing in Beckway. Jessica and the team. Nicole, that pleasure. Great job. Ready, Grannies? Keep up the good work. Continue the excellent work. SusGren, Omar Wilson, as a future environmentalist / environmental consultant, I just want to say that
Thank you.
I highly commend Orisha and Christy for the excellent work that they have done from through SusGren and in around Union Island. Also,
Thank you, Omar.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, and Omar has hit some serious questions. Like last episode.
That means that we have done our jobs.
Last episode, Omar hit a serious question. When I went into the bank, I said, Omar, we get a question. What serious?
but you know,
interaction.
We forget something most important. Wilson was talking about training. Actually, the Union Island environmental attackers, with the president Katrina Collins Coy and you, Stanton, you guys are the main expert on bird watching. You guys could actually train people, because I was trained and Christy was trained by Union Island environmental attackers through Katrina Collins Coy. So they are local people. You are bird expert. I
might need retraining, man. I can't even.
You might need retraining. But Christy can retrain, because now Christy is the one who's going out with Katrina and doing all of that, and so she and Katrina will be the one doing training. So,
no, trust me.
So
I need some retraining. Hero beating me. Kenya Ford beating me.
Oh, Kenya is off the chain. She is good.
Nicole, they're Pledge beating me for sure.
Good.
So I need serious retraining. I can't even.
You'll have to retrain. You'll have to retrain Santa.
Whenever you're ready, just let me know.
I need reorientation. So, what you say? This is the last of the last. We're down to 1 hour and a half. I guess it's a Netflix series indeed. So I want to thank you guys for coming out again.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All of this. Don't forget to tune in. I believe we have a conversation tree on Saturday, which we'll be speaking with a young man out of Trinidad. We're going a little further out to Trinidad. We're testing the technology to see how far the technology could reach. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we did Canada on the mainland.
Nice.
Today we have mainland and Union Island. Next Saturday we'll have a Trinidad guest. So we're testing all the technology to see. But I mean, the overarching goal is to inspire for us to all learn together, including me, the viewers, and for persons to get inspired to after seeing the work of others. So.
Yep.
I guess that's it for the night. Good night, folks.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone, and thanks to everyone who commented and liked. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.